Hey guys, what's up? It's King Christo here today, back with the best hardware released in 2017 for the budget overall. Now I don't mean for any specific budget, I just mean overall the best product for the money. Keep in mind that all the parts mentioned in this PC are not all meant to be put in the same computers together, as they are going to be very different categories, prices, etc. Needless to say, it's a month into 2018 and it's really time to take a look back on 2017, where we have come through an entire year. So without further ado, let's get into it. As for the CPU, it's definitely not the easiest to decide, as different CPUs are used for many different tasks, and different CPUs are good for some things and not so good for others. Overall though, when you want to do a little bit of everything, the clear winner is the Ryzen 5 1600. Let's take a look to admire this thing's specs. For $200, you get a hexa-core CPU with hyper-threading at a stable 3.2 GHz. Previously, something like this would cost $400 or more, and not to mention, it can be paired with a cheap B350 motherboard, and you can overclock it to 4 GHz. The IPC is far improved over any other AMD architecture, in fact over 50%, and finally, just the cherry on top, it comes with a stock cooler that is actually quite good and can handle those overclocks. An honorable mention would be the i5-8400, which at MSRP could be gotten for about the same price. Its boost clock and IPC are higher, making it perform better than the 1600 in some games, but the lack of hyperthreading and overclockability pushes the 1600 farther up in my opinion. Now I'd like to give a special thank to my friend Jake for helping me up with the script, and for that I decided to let him voice over the next section. Needless to say, let's get ready to listen to his nice voice as he rambles on about CPU coolers.
So for the best coolers of 2017, we are going to be splitting this into two sections, air and liquid. For the air cooler, we chose the AMD Ryzen stock cooler. This cooler comes with most Ryzen CPUs. Whether you get Stealth or Wraith, it comes with no extra price added. Not only is this cooler completely free, it can keep some Ryzen processors heavily overclocked to 4 GHz. It can keep it decently cool while staying very quiet, and it also looks pretty good, especially when compared to the Intel stock cooler. Next up, if you're a true enthusiast and you want that snazzy liquid cooling, we chose the Cooler Master Liquid ML 240 liter RGB cooler. Is that liter or is it just L?
What? No, Jacob. It's just L.
We chose the Cooler Master Liquid ML 240L RGB cooler. For $69.99, you get a 240mm radiator, which can take a fight with other brands' 280mm variants. Not to mention, normally a name brand modern 240mm rad CPU cooler would cost upwards of $100. Finally, you get a good black color scheme with RGB lighting, which makes it well worth the money, which means this can be put in any build and still look very impressive.
Next up for the motherboard, I chose the ASRock AB350M Ryzen motherboard. This motherboard has the AM4 socket, so it is paired nicely with the Ryzen 5 1600. Also, it costs about $75 at the time, but it goes on sale very often for less than $60. For a micro ATX board, it's quite good with NVMe support, and has a full 4 DIMM slots for RAM upgradability. The board also allows you to overclock your processor, as well as having good VRM heatsinks so you can get the most out of your processor. Finally, it looks pretty nice with its black and white color scheme and has decent back I/O. With the shortage of DDR4, it's getting pretty difficult to find decently priced RAM nowadays, especially at a decently high speed. Needless to say, one of the best deals I could find was the Team Dark memory by the Team Group. It has a pretty baller looking heatsink which comes in silver and red, and the timings and speed are actually quite good. Specifically, it runs at 3000 MHz and the timings are 16, 18, 18, 38. This is definitely a product I suggest pairing with Ryzen, as I haven't ever heard complaints of Team Series memory not running at its rated speed. The only thing I'll say is that the stock voltage isn't the lowest it could be at 1.35 volts, so overclocking may be a little limited, but at 3000 MHz that isn't going to be necessary anyways. And oh yeah, did I mention the price? This kit will set you back about $165, which at the time is actually pretty dang cheap. Once again, for storage, it's time to split this into two categories. The first, hard drives, and the second, SSDs. For the hard drive, I chose the Seagate Barracuda 2TB drive. This drive only costs $60, which is quite cheap compared to the Western Digital's 2TB drives, which often reach over $100. It runs at a stable 7200 RPM, which is pretty good because from my personal experience, loading applications on a 5400 RPM makes you feel like you're gaming on a potato. Finally, it has a full 64 megabytes of cache, and so the drive is fairly fully spec'd for the price. Next up, we got our SSDs. With the price going down slowly on super speed NVMe storage and the ease of installing it on just a single screw, no extra cables, mess, etc., I decided to go with the Samsung 960 EVO 250GB. This drive can obtain about 2600 megabyte read speeds, which is 26 times faster than a normal hard drive, and more than 5 times faster than a normal SATA SSD. It costs about $120, and overall the drive would be perfect for installing your OS and all your applications you use very frequently, while all your mass storage could be put onto that 2TB hard drive. Graphics cards prices are tricky right now due to the recent increases in price, and so I'm going to be judging the graphics cards based off of their MSRPs, since at this point anything else is just unreasonable. I decided that the Radeon RX 580 was the best graphics card released in 2017. Now this is for two reasons. First of all, the only GPUs technically released in 2017 that are even worth mentioning are the Radeon 500 series by AMD, Vega, and the NVIDIA GTX 1080 Ti. I would definitely say that the 1080 Ti is the best GPU, but not the best for the money, just the best overall. The RX 580 on the other hand is within the middle ground for graphics cards, costing an MSRP of about $220 for the 4GB model and $280 for the 8GB model. Needless to say, the GPU performs very similarly to the GTX 1060 6GB, which makes sense as they are about the same price. Most games at 1080p would run 60 FPS maxed on this GPU. Overall, if you can get one for MSRP, I'd say that the RX 580 is much better for the price than the 1060 because it supports FreeSync, which is a much more affordable technology than NVIDIA G-Sync. I decided not to add a case to this parts list, as there's too much personal preference with cases, and therefore it's not really my right to choose. However, if you are interested, my personal favorite case is the Phanteks P400S. Finally, for the power supply, I chose the Seasonic M12II 620W. It gets you 620 watts of power, which is plenty enough for most systems, and then more to overclock as well. It also cost $60 at the time, so for all the features, it definitely doesn't break the bank. First off, it is 80 plus bronze, which is perfectly fine for the average build. Second of all, Seasonic actually makes their PSUs, not rebrand other companies' units, and so the internals are very good compared to some other companies who slap their brand on someone else's and call it theirs. Finally, the PSU is fully modular and comes with black cables, which will make cable management and the overall aesthetics of your build much better compared to a non-modular PSU with ketchup and mustard cables. I hope you all enjoyed my choice for the best products released in 2017 for the budget, and maybe learned a thing or two. Now take everything with a grain of salt, obviously my personal bias was put into this list. If you have any other products that you think are really good, feel free to post them in the comments below. Also, my Discord server is linked in the description if anyone wants to join. It's essentially a live forum where the Christo community talks about tech and other super cool things, so it's definitely appreciated if you join. Now without further ado, this is King Christo signing off, and peace out.